right there. So you can see how filthy everything was. You can see how filthy my face was. This is the part that was touching my face the most, and that's probably all dirt off of my skin. But what was this? Mountain Hardwear Lamina Z -30 synthetic bag. Don't buy it. It's a liability safety-wise. I wish you guys could smell it too. It's got powerful smoke smell to it just from me living in it for so long. But the zipper on that thing got stuck constantly. I almost wet the bed. I don't know how many times. Thank God I never did actually, but it was probably 15 or 20 times. I came very close because I was stuck in that thing. You can imagine if I'd been stuck in it in the place built caught on fire then, me spending a full minute trying to get out of it, I would just grab my knife and cut myself out because I would have died otherwise. But I'm not a fan of that thing. I came to love this personal one because it's what did keep me as warm as I was, but I named it Patience because of all the stuff I did. But I got a review of that sleeping bag, and I'm going to do some reviews of other sleeping bags. And of all the stuff, I told these people that, if you want to help me out with this, I will do a review of everything on YouTube after I get out, and I'm going to honor that and make sure that all that stuff gets out there. So subscribe to the channel. I'm not a real gearhead anymore. I used to be a big way. I used to work in the industry. I'm really a lot more interested in connecting with nature when I'm outside these days, but I know gear very well. I've helped test quite a bit of it for Outdoor Research and Helly Hansen, and was an outfitter for years and years. So if you see a gear review coming from me, it's probably going to be from a piece of gear that looks like the condition of these things that I just showed you, that they have been used up and thoroughly tested by somebody who knows what the heck he's talking about. And the whole unveiling out of a box opening whatever videos and that being a review is total malarkey. You cannot review a product until you've worn it out if you want to do a proper job of it. So I'll be doing that. I've been doing the boots that I have on. I'm really happy with. I'm going to do a review on those, but that'll be its own playlist on my YouTube channel. So that was the fire. Oh yeah, and then the explosions in the fire. I think they only really caught one of them, but there was a shot of me standing outside, and the whole freaking thing, just this flash of white light shoots out of there. I think that was probably a bear banger, but it could have been a CO2 cartridge or one of those other things. It was pretty dangerous to be next to that blaze for a while because there was serious metallic, like shrapnel explosions happening inside of there. And it was only after I cataloged every possible thing I had that could possibly explode, and then counted how many explosions there had been, that I felt safe with being close enough to that fire to approach it and pull wood out of it and salvage bits of it to make my survival shelter that I spent the night in. It was about 1 a.m. and 2 degrees Fahrenheit outside by that point, so 30 degrees below freezing. I didn't have any mitts, and I spent the next 2 hours plus building a lean-to style shelter. I had already tapped at that point, so I was able to get somewhat of a weather report from production after they told me that they were not going to be able to come get me until first light. Actually, it took them another hour and a half, 2 hours beyond that to finally get out there. But I had to get to it and build a legit, crashed an airplane kind of shelter to survive in. So I built a lean-to with the opening facing the blaze. I brought in a bunch of wood so I could continue keeping my own body length fire going alongside me. And then I used the 55-gallon drum as a backstop to the fire and a heat reflector to keep wind from blowing from that direction onto me, keep sparks from landing onto my sleeping bag, which was going to be totally exposed, and then the lean-to on the backside. And it looked pretty rough and rugged, and it was, but it did the trick. And quite honestly, that was the best night's sleep I had the whole time I was out there. I was more comfortable than I had been anywhere. I had laid down a thick bed of spruce boughs from the fire that hadn't burned up yet, to where they were about that thick. I had a big, thick, deep mattress on. I had that back wall keeping the wind off of me, and a full body length fire, which is how you do it in the Arctic. Unfortunately, if you're out there for the long term without a chainsaw, that is not a feasible way to live. But I only needed to make it, 7 or 8 or 9 hours through the night. So I gave myself a stack of logs. I could grab one log and throw it onto the fire without having to get in my sleeping bag. And I was warm and comfortable more than any other night that particular night. And at ease. And I had moved on and made my peace with what had happened before the fire was cold. So that was my night. I was happy I was going to see my girlfriend really soon, and I'd made my peace. So I guess I have a little bit of wisdom afterwards, but I was crawling into bed at 3:21 a.m. according to production. 9:41 in the morning, the chopper finally shows to pick me up. It had been probably 2 hours since they had been able to fly. I have no idea why it took them an extra 2 hours beyond, sunrise to come get me, but it did, and that's how it went. So I did some, deep thinking, and luckily they got it on camera. I'm really happy with how this part of my edit went, because it is how I felt about the situation. I was out there for reason number one. I was out there was for faith, to learn, I can't even say exactly what it was about my faith that I needed to learn. It wasn't about religion. It was about faith in myself and in being taken care of. I have long had, I don't know how to say this. Being present is a real important thing. It's probably the most important thing that we'll do in our lives. If we're not present with our reality, what's right in front of us, we can't be there for it. We can't truly love somebody. We can't take care of ourselves in an emergency situation. If we're trying to be in the past or the future, neither of which really exists, and we're not really living. Being in a situation like that puts you in the present in a very stark way. Not falling apart, maintaining yourself when your attitude might be going south, and recognizing that and doing something about it. And then I have always felt, at least for quite a few years now, that I am very in debt for this amazing existence that I live. I didn't exist, 40 years ago, and all of a sudden I did, and I didn't do anything for that. I didn't make that happen anyway. It was given to me from nowhere, out of nothing, which means I owe a tremendous amount of debt to whatever it is that created me or allowed me to exist. And I had thought, long and hard about what it means to pay that debt back, and what it came down to for me is the only currency that I have to pay that debt back is gratitude. It was a gift, and when you're given a gift, you show gratitude for it, or you won't be given more gifts. You wouldn't do that for somebody else if you gifted them something, and they just kind of set it aside, saying, whatever. That would be the last gift from you they'd ever receive, and I feel that that's the truth of the matter in the real world. Is you have to appreciate what you have. You have to appreciate that you can draw breath, and that you have taste buds, and that you have had people in your life that you love, even if you've lost them. You have to be grateful for every opportunity and experience, even the negative ones that we have, and without that gratitude, it's not going to come back to you. So that's kind of my thing. I feel like I can hear porpoises blowing out here in the water right behind me. So that's kind of what I had to say at the end there, and I hope that meant something to somebody out there, because that's how I like to live my life. life, and I wouldn't give that up for $500,000 ever. There's plenty of people with that much money who don't have gratitude for it and don't enjoy their lives, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Let's see. So then we go over to Jordan waking up in the morning, dreaming about his chocolate-covered bone marrow treats that have him tempted to tap out. His edit leans a lot, like I said earlier, towards him feeling like he's losing tons of weight when he did lose 30 pounds that he gained to be on the show. But when he came out, he had actually said that he had only, not in the show, but since and on Facebook, that he actually only was a few pounds below his normal body weight by the time he left. Jordan is he's built like a basketball player. He's a lanky, strong guy, and I was really surprised to see him in the period between boot camp and orientation camp that he had been able to put on 25 or 30 pounds, and because he had always said during boot camp that he just couldn't put weight on, and I guess he was just drinking olive oil and energy drinks and whatnot just constantly to do that, and it paid off for him. He goes out and he's doing his ice fishing thing with a pole, and he knows the tactic of filling his holes in with snow so that they don't freeze to solid ice. And I noticed while I was rewatching that he was actually able to just basically shovel out slush from those holes instead of solid ice with a wooden board that he had. And it didn't look like he had to do any chopping at all, but I could be wrong about that, but that's pretty huge. I had to give up putting those lines in the water after a little while because it was 15 minutes of concerted effort to check each freaking line, and there's a game you're playing out there of energy out to energy in, and that was not one that was going to pay off. Goes to Wonia. She's making her last soup. Maybe she made it a week earlier, I'm not sure, but out of squirrel tails, rabbit's feet, and a bunch of bones. And that sounded like a pretty typical diet for me, except all my pieces were fish pieces. They were fish heads and fins and scales and bones. But you eat every darn part of the animal out there, except in the case of a rabbit, probably the hair. And in the case of a fish, I even ate the scales and the fins. There's one little gland about the size of a pea that's like a gallbladder or something like that was not edible. But other than that, the entire fish got cut up and eaten. You have to get creative with food out there. And like I said, I was eating caribou antler, which I'd never heard of anybody doing before. But I knew it wasn't going to poison me. I knew it had a lot of calcium in it, probably a lot of other important minerals. So I was doing it because I could. I could keep something running through my system. And then I was eating those roots. And just a teeny little bit of lichen. I wasn't hitting lichen too hard because it messed me up earlier on in the season. But she goes out to check snares. No sign of anything moving anywhere. Not a rabbit, not a mouse, not a squirrel, not anything. And I had that experience quite a few times where there would be entire periods, 2 or 3 days straight, where there was not a single new track in the snow. Fresh, beautiful snow that will take any track at all. Not a mouse moved for days. It wasn't linked to weather in any way that I could tell. It wasn't linked to the moon. It wasn't linked to anything I could figure out. Just everything stopped for days. It was a total ghost town. It was a very weird experience. Even on nice weather, it was very weird. And then all of a sudden, everything would be out again. I never did clue into what that was, but it happened to me too. It goes back to Jordan on day 73. So this is the full day and a half after I had tapped, a full day after I had been picked up. And I'm not sure what morning they actually got this, audio from him, but he's talking about his tough luck and all that stuff. And it sounded like it was all pieced together, like it was probably part of 10 different conversations. But again, that's an editing thing. Goes back to Wonia, and here comes the helicopter. Wonia tapped out. She had lost 33% of her body weight. I did the math on Barry. Barry was messed up too. He had lost 31.2% of his body weight. That's totally incredible to have gone out there for both of those two and lost a third of their body weight. I lost just over a quarter of mine. I was willing to go a bit further than that. I understand the decisions and the head place they were in that allowed them to say, I'm going to go this far with my body, because, you know, it's just a TV show, it's just a whatever. If you're staying out there for that long, it's not just a TV show. It's not just about money. It's about something a lot deeper and more important than that. And I was willing to go there myself. I felt like I had a little ways to go before I would be tapped for medical stuff. My body felt good. Aside from, you know, my fingers and toes, I was actually feeling really good. I had not gone to the bathroom, had a bowel movement for an entire month, believe it or not, at the end there. And I still wasn't experiencing any digestive problems. I knew I wasn't doing great because I hadn't had a bowel movement in a month, but I was feeling fine. I wasn't feeling messed up at all. So I know I was willing to bring myself, if it really came down to it, to the point of 143 pounds, which is the lightest weight I had been during a sickness when I was in the 9th grade, which is when I stopped growing, because the sickness was that intense. It stopped me from growing. I knew how skinny I was back then. That's way too far. I know that now. But I had been willing, you know, my optimal was to go out at 170 pounds. And then I thought, you know, I'll go down to 155 without really worrying about it. And beyond that, I'm really going to have to question whether I want to push myself that hard. Right now, I'm probably about 190, 95 pounds and about 5 or 10 pounds above my normal cruising, you know, body weight. I had gotten down to 161 pounds. And I figured that I had about 5 or 6 pounds of waste inside of my body that I had not evacuated yet. So I had actually gotten down to 155 pounds in that respect. Which was kind of the lowest I wanted to get without really questioning my motives and my sanity. So I guess that was the right time for me to go. Day 72 also had a lot of significance for me. I had a very good friend who was on season 3 in Patagonia, and day 72 was when they tapped, and that was pretty meaningful for me. There's something about, you know, about that connection that's pretty important, and I don't know how many people have made it that many days on the show, but it's only a few of us. 3 this season, 4 season 3, I think 7 total in the history of the show. So that's a pretty exclusive club. Proud to be a part of. I only just made it in by midnight though, so nobody's gonna get any closer to it than I did, I guess. Yeah, so Woniya loses 33% of her weight, and she is still in it to win it, but just knows she's asking too much of her body, makes the call, and the woman is made of steel. She is just incredibly tough person, and her and Barry both, 2 of the toughest people who I have ever met in my life and who have ever been on that show, for sure. I gotta hand it to them. Those people are heroes of mine today. So she goes out, it's her birthday, and man, great. That's awesome, Woniya. You earned it, and man. Day 77. So we go from day 73, from when Woniya taps, to day 77. Somewhere in there, 4 days pass where Jordan is out there, last one not being rescued, and that's a little bit worrisome and troublesome to me. I was in Yellowknife in my hotel room or the hospital or out at production camp during those 4 days, and basically, I think probably the night after Wonea tapped out, there was a pretty significant storm. I would dare call it a blizzard, because I remember watching it from my hotel room, just horizontal snow flying past my window, and Jordan was out there in it. I don't know that Jordan should have been out there in it. Luckily, he had a really solid shelter, and I guess production knew he had shelter and food, but they also just seen a shelter go up in flames just like that, and I think it was a little bit too risky to keep him out there. They had weather reports. They knew it was coming, and maybe they weren't going to be able to get his wife in time to bring him out, but to put him through 4 more days of that, some of which being probably a worse storm than we experienced out there. I don't think that was very responsible. I can't get behind that. Just to get that scene at the end, it was very beautiful when his wife came out to get him, and I'm really happy for him and his family, but he should not have had to weather that storm. Luckily, he was probably the most equipped of all of us to do it because he had calories in his body still, but I was not happy about the fact that somewhere around day 50, 55, they called us up on our sat phones and told us not to use our knives and our axes anymore at night, because a night rescue was not going to happen. They were not going to come get us. All the boating had stopped right around that period of time on the lake because the bays had frozen up. So visiting us via water, which is how they had been doing it for media med checks, was not going to be possible anymore, nor was rescue that way. And to fly a helicopter, you need good visibility, and that doesn't mean dark and blizzards. So anytime the weather was bad, which was often, and anytime it was dark, they were not going to be able to come get us if we stuck ourselves with a knife, or our shelter burned down, or say Barry's health finally did fail, and the weather was horrible. One of us was going to die. It was a 50-50 chance that the night that my shelter burned down that the weather was good. Had it not been good, it was a 50-50 chance I would survive the night, and a much lower chance I'd survive it with all my fingers and toes. So I've heard, rumors on Facebook that some of production is headed back up there, have headed up back there all along, and that's where season 7 is going to be. I don't know if that's the truth or not, but sure seems like it is. And for those last few weeks that I was out there, they were in over their heads, safety-wise. They didn't have options to keep us as safe as we were told we would be going in. We were not told that there would not be night rescues, and we were not told that at a certain point they were not going to be able to do anything about it. I wholeheartedly didn't think that we were going to last till day 50 or so, and that this was going to be the shortest season ever. I think a lot of people thought that, except for the 10 people who were out there. And I